Good evening, campers, streamers, and babysitters, and welcome to our breakdown, review, analysis, whatever you want to call it, of the latest installment in the Friday the 13th franchise. Yes, folks, it's shocking. It's here with Sweet Revenge. Put a big old asterisk on that entire sentence because this is basically just I don't know, what would you call this, Luke? This was like a funded by a company, obviously Angry Orchard, the beer company. They commissioned this from Jason Universe, the company, the production company, whatever they are, and now we have this 13-minute short film, and it's actually directed by somebody that we quite like their work, Mike P. Nelson. But it's here, and it's the first thing that we've gotten Friday the 13th in 16 years, other than the video game. So I don't know. How do you feel?
Oh man, it's been a long wait, and we talked about it a little bit on the Sunday Scaries a couple weeks ago. And I'm not against the Jason Universe pairing up with some of these companies to kind of do some product placements, just to be able to garner some cash to kind of get things kickstarted and giving us Jason properties that because Lord knows we haven't seen them in such a long time. So I wasn't against the whole Angry Orchard pairing, especially when it just came out. Oh, this is just kind of a commercial. And then we are like, oh, no, it's actually a short film. I got rather excited just to be able to see what they were going to be able to present. And I mean, yeah, in Sweet Revenge, you certainly do see your share of Angry Orchard in here and apples and things like that. But having Mike P. Nelson actually steer the ship here, I was excited to see what that was going to look like. We're a fan of some of his properties out there. Now, did this hit every point that I wanted it to? No, but it's a decent start. I'll say not a great start, but maybe we're finding our footing and we're going to see where we're going to go from here. But I'll say decent start.
Yeah, that's a really nice way to put that. I like that because it's for me, I was also, I'm a huge Friday the 13th fan. I say it all the time. But like, this is my franchise. It's the one I grew up with, and I was pretty indifferent about this whole thing when I found out that it was, kind of a promotion. But at the end of the day, I'm also not like against it. It's something, right? And that's kind of the mantra I think that we've been getting this entire time as well. It's something. And when we had Mike P. Nelson attached, I got more excited. And, looking at this as for what it was, there are positives, there are negatives. There are things that I wish they wouldn't have done. There are things that I wish they maybe would have taken in a different direction. But at the end of all of this, did I pay for a ticket? Did I buy a Blu ray? No. I watched this on YouTube for free. And I guess with that adage to it, this is not terrible. I think there are better Friday the 13th short films out there. I think there are higher quality looking Friday the 13th short films out there, which is a bit concerning. But I think that at the end of the day, it's just hopefully, like you said, a jumping off point to get some cash to, hopefully throw at a real project eventually down the road here.
Absolutely. And this wasn't a big ask. It's 13 minutes, like you said, on YouTube for free. But even then, I did feel slightly underwhelmed, I think, maybe of what I was expecting. When you hear Mike P. Nelson attached, and we don't know the budget on this, but, having Angry Orchard, decently sized brands funding some of this and thinking, okay, maybe we'll get some sort of budget. This isn't a big budgeted project. This isn't something that we're going to go balls to the wall with. But when you look at Friday the 13th and you talk about, the fan films that are going to be made, everyone's going to talk about Never Hike Alone. That's the big one that's out there. And I wanted something at least comparable to that, I think. I think when I watch Never Hike Alone, especially when you get into the sequel, kind of gives you the warm and fuzzies when you get some reminiscent things that are going on. And that's what we're looking for, I think, with Friday the 13th. At least that's what I wanted with Sweet Revenge. Unfortunately, it didn't give me any of those warm and fuzzies. I felt like this is, and never at one point did I ever wash away oh, it's a short film. It's a low budget short film. That was pretty prevalent in my head through the duration of that 13 minutes, which was unfortunate just because I wanted to kind of get lost in the concept. And I kept going back with that asterisk of, oh, it's good for a short film, but I wanted a little bit more than that, especially when you look at something like Never Hike Alone and you can't help but compare the two. But so it left me underwhelmed in that aspect. But, they have a vision for this. They opened up some doors, which I wasn't necessarily expecting them to establish too much lore we talked about it before we started recording this, Dylan. You talked about just kind of the bare basics of kind of campfires and doing a Jason chase scene, which I think is what we all really want. And we got some of that here. Again, it did leave me a little underwhelmed from what we do get, and where you could have taken this 13-minute short. It just seemed like a little bit of a mixed bag of we're trying to establish some new narrative, also please the kills, but I never got fully, I don't think it was fully effective in either aspect, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's why I think like overall I'm pretty mixed on the product as a whole, like stepping away from the fact that it's a short film and everything. I just think that like if you're going at it, and I assume the 13 minutes was a mandate by Angry Orchard, it just screams just like corporate, like, ooh, we got to make it match up 13, 13. You know what I mean? Again, why it came out on a 13th instead of waiting for an actual Friday the 13th and just surprise dropping it, you know? I think building up to it, that was all very poor choice from Jason Universe and Angry Orchard, because like I think you built up expectations, and then I think, at the end of the day, this was never going to live up to that. But had you surprised us, maybe this would have been a little bit lighter. But at the end of the day, I think like there are some pretty big positives that I will give it, which is I like the gore. I like the bodies that we see. I think the practical effects look really good for the most part. The only one that I had a little bit of a little bit of a pull out moment for was when he was getting his head cut off by this propeller, which is awesome. I love that. But it's his head just looked slightly smaller by the time they got to like where he was actually getting sliced up. So that's minor stuff. That's short film stuff. But like for me, I think like the gore is great. Jason's look is meh. Still am not crazy about this. I it's the hockey mask looks awkward. It looks like long, like almost like it's not like wide, it's just longer. And like just in general, not to hate on the actor, considering he's the first one to play him in a long time, I felt like he just wasn't very imposing. I felt like he was just kind of like, I'm going to walk from this side of the screen to the other. The only time I actually felt a little bit of tension from him is when he picked up our lead, Eve, and held her by the throat. But the scene is also just so dark. It's like, man, like, can we kind of get some kind of a balance here? Is he scary, or are we just going to completely throw him out in front of us and just keep showing Jason? And I'm sorry, when you're showing him like this, he's not very imposing.
I think you're 100% correct with that. I think even before we got into this, when Jason Universe released the mask, that was such a big talking point for people of, how can we have done a little bit better than that? And I think that still stays here with Jason as the character choice here. What is it? Is Schuler White? Is that the name? I didn't look,
Yes,
unfortunately.
yeah,
Okay.
that's the name.
And Schuler White is playing Jason on the TV series as well. Is that right? Okay.
Let me see. I don't know.
Before fact check me on that one. But that is,
No, he's not.
no, he's not. Okay. He's, this is a little concerning just because there was such an outcry, and everything was already probably filmed before San Diego Comic-Con. So it was, we already committed to what the stylistic choice of Jason is going to be. And it was a misfire to begin with, but I'm hoping the Jason universe will listen to, I think that's a pretty big sticking point as we get um out of this short film here. And a lot of people were saying, ugh, that just doesn't look right. He doesn't look as imposing. And I think that is 100% right, where he was used real sparingly here, and more so than I feel like he should have. Where I wanted him to be that looming specter. We only get really one scene of him kind of sneaking up on our character and being like, "Oh, there's Jason." I wanted more moments of that tension of waiting for him to show up, and I don't think we necessarily got that. Again, this is a 13-minute short, so they had to keep it moving. But I really would have loved to see him that first 5 minutes of him being that looming specter and really having that imposing force. Because like you, even by the time we get to him at the end with that one scene of the silhouette, I just didn't feel it. It just felt like a guy in a mask to me. So I'm hoping they do make some alterations there. What we did get with Jason coming into the cabin, you talked about that one kill, the propeller kill. I think those two, that sequence was done really well. I just wish we
Mhm.
would have gotten more of that. We were coming into a
Yes.
lot of the scenes after the fact where it's like we're seeing the mayhem and the gore, where I would have been like, oh, I wonder how this scene went down, especially when you get into a Friday 13th. If you're not going to produce anything else, you do want that guts and gore, where I think we had some good, but then also we really should have taken advantage of if we were going to present some of these ideas. Man, let's show this on screen to really please some of the fans after 16 years.
Absolutely. This does motivate me to want to get out the and write and produce our own little Friday the 13th short. I'm not going to lie, because like I thought of an idea as this was going, where I'm just like, again, I'm not trying to poo poo all the ideas here. I think that it's great that you have a plan and you're trying to show that. I mean, I completely get where Mike P. Nelson is at. This is kind of maybe a trial run for him through the team at Jason Universe. So it's like maybe he will helm a film for them. But like, I think like just keeping it simple would have probably been more exhilarating, more fun, more exciting for fans, and just having it be literally a campfire tale, and then Jason shows up and causes some mayhem. We really lean into the gore, and giving us kind of everything we wanted. But I am going to be completely honest when I say that I think you did too much with the whole, oh, she's dead in the lake, she's coming back, she gets stabbed in the chest, and she pulls it out and is still alive. It's like, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't pick up that she was dead, well, or like reanimated or whatever the hell's going on with her, until my second viewing, because I'm like, wait, I thought that was just bad editing to like to go from day to night. Like I'm like, I didn't get that feeling, that transference. And it's like that's already kind of something you got to play with and you got to really sell to people if you're doing it in a full blown feature. You can't do that in 13 minutes. You know what I mean? You spend so much time setting up these characters that we see for 5 seconds and they die, and then it's like, why didn't we just get right to the meat and potatoes of the whole concept?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a wasted time in terms of the narrative establishing things. That's not really what we came for. So when you have are establishing, these two are either married or engaged, I can't remember what they were, but the significance of their relationship, yeah, we kind of get a turn there for just a brief second, and then Jason shows up, and we're really more so focusing on that aspect of it. So I think maybe they made the focal point of a couple different narrative choices, maybe again a misfire on that aspect when we're really coming in. You got 13 minutes. If that obviously is the mandate here of, hey, we only have so much time to really tell a story to really please fans, and I think maybe some of those scenes could have just been reworked, cut, and really focused on building some tension to really build up when Jason shows up on screen. Because you know I don't mind him pulling her down into the lake, but it just sometimes I want something a little bit bigger, especially when you've been so far removed from the franchise. And for that to be the first thing that we get, and then him popping up right behind her, just felt like I wanted a big bang. It was just more of a fizzle for me, unfortunately. And by the time we get to the end of it, I picked up that something was going on when we get to the car, but beyond that, those I had to rewatch it that second time to be like, okay, there are little hints in terms of what she looks like, but I wasn't really picking that up either. I just thought it was a little bit awkward in terms of the story and where we're going, because I don't know if this is pulling from the lore of all the other installments, because then you kind of get a plot hole there, and what we're really working towards. So I my brain was going a mile a minute with so many questions. I was loving Friday the 13th, and I found myself focusing on some of that, and then it's like, oh, I'm playing catch up to what's happening on screen.
Yeah, and I think overall all it does is kind of create distractions, when simply what they should have done is just give us classic Friday the 13th and reassure fans that, hey, we know what we're doing. We got this. We can do, a classic Friday the 13th scene. Trust us, we can transport you back to this feeling. We just we have other things to tell you, of course, but let's just, focus on that. Like, win everybody's trust. You've been on a rocky road, Jason Universe. Like everything has kind of come up short since your whole announcement and everything. It just feels like everything is so half-assed. And it's like, I hate to, say that, but and be really negative, but like I'm just being honest. I'm just a fan who's watching this right now, who's seeing, all of these little shortcuts and things. And it's like, if you don't build to something, worthwhile, or at least show me that you can make something worthwhile, then I'm sorry, I'm just gonna be a bit hesitant for all of the stuff you guys come with until you actually prove that, we're taking this seriously.
Yeah, it's such a franchise that has been we lean on news rather than actual properties, unfortunately, nowadays, where it's just like, oh, what's the latest legal issues with Friday the 13th? And oh, I guess we're not getting anything for the next few years. And then when something does pop up, we talk about it on the channel. A lot of Friday 13th content tends not to do that well just because we've been so far removed from getting anything new. So when you're really hardcore fans, you get excited to see something like Sweet Revenge pop up because we really just get a lot of, Never Hike Alone. Great properties there, but, unattached. They're just kind of their fan films because we're not getting anything. So when something is like Jason Universe is doing this and we got the TV show coming out, and how's this going to wrap into that? And what kind of lore are we going to establish? You can't help but get excited. And, maybe that's our own fault. I don't know. But I just felt a little underwhelmed from what we were getting. And I just wanted something that was going to give me those warm and fuzzies. Sweet Revenge, unfortunately, didn't do that. It did start getting me to ask a bunch of questions, which I think is good to say, well, where's the story going to go? Now, that's only good if we do get some sort of follow up and maybe some sort of payoff with the lore. Now, would I like to see Mike P. Nelson maybe expand this narrative and fully flesh out his idea? Sure. I think he could be an interesting choice. I think, he does have a lot of ideas in his back pocket that he did show with Sweet Revenge. It just having this be a short film, he presented a lot of stuff. He threw a lot of stuff at us that we didn't really get a payoff for. Again, we're asking those questions, but I think at some point we're going to need that payoff.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think overall, again, I'm going to come at this from two minds. As a fan, I'm a little underwhelmed and I have questions, and they're unfortunately not great questions. Does it make me encouraged to see what Jason Universe has going forward? Not really, but I haven't really been encouraged by them at all. So I think, like, from that standpoint, it's just very much one of those, it's free, watch it if you want, take it or leave it. I feel like this is going to be very inconsequential. I don't think this is going to be a stepping stone for this series. It'll be something that somebody's going to make a video about in 10 years and be like, "Oh, do you remember this lost Friday the 13th fan film?" It's like that's the video you're going to see on YouTube here, like, again, in a decade. But as just objectively looking at it, it's a solid attempt. They did what they had to do with their corporate mandated, runtime and all of the ad placed marketing with the apples and everything. It's fun, it's cheeky, and I think that at the end of the day, hey, it's something. It is a video. It is there. It's on the internet forever, and that's it. That's all I
Yeah.
got. Like,
Yeah.
it's just I
Yeah.
got nothing, man.
I'm right there with you. As we sit here and kind of look back in hindsight about this. I know Dylan, you brought up, I think it was a couple weeks ago on the Sunday Scares when we did talk about this. Do it going the VHS route with
Yeah.
Friday 13th. How interesting would it this been? We got Mike P. Nelson, who is an actual name director. It would have been really interesting if they would have waited for October and released an installment each week of October. With a Angry Orchard, whatever you want to do, in sort of a promotion. I think that could have been if you had a director each different week and telling their own campfire tale of Friday 13th could have been interesting. But they wanted to get this out here, I guess. Now it is out here. It's fine. If you're perusing YouTube, haven't watched it yet, I think it's worth a watch. It's nothing that's gonna blow your mind, but it does get you asking questions, and I don't think it's uh, gonna fully fill your appetite for Friday 13th. But hey, Jason's on screen somewhere, so it's decent start. Not as exciting as I wanted it to be, though.
Yeah, that's kind of unfortunate, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. It is just a little film that it's out there, and if you love it, I'm happy for you. I'm glad that you got a kick out of it. I think that's awesome, and that you can enjoy this. You have it. It's your Friday the 13th to take and run with. But for me, it's like I don't want to be one of those fans who's just like, oh, they gave me something, so I have to love it. You know what I mean? It's like, this is a franchise that means so much to me. This is what really made me a horror fan, like, through and through. So it's like I really just need to see better from this, and I will not accept subpar material and just say keep giving me more of this. It's like, no, earn it, earn it. And I think that's maybe what A24 and Crystal Lake will try to do. They're definitely taking their time, so that's good. But jury's still out on that. Still need to see a trailer. So confident about it, but I'm not like gonna be totally surprised. I'm very Alien Earth with Crystal Lake in my mind, where I'm like, okay, we'll see what happens.
Gotta wait and see. So I don't know. I think this is an okay building block. I just don't want this to be the foundation. So hopefully they produce something a little bit stronger going forward. Hopefully they take some of that criticism and maybe steer the ship in a different direction a little bit, especially with the narrative if we're going to continue to get these short films. But hey, Jason's back in some capacity.
Absolutely. Alrighty, guys, this is going to wrap us up here. So let us know what you thought down below. Obviously, if you love it, hate it, in between, we want to hear your thoughts. And yeah, definitely, if you like the video, if you're just stumbling across us, I'm going to be very curious to see if Sweet Revenge just got Friday the 13th to actually pop up on some of your guys' timelines for the first time in a while. Because like Luke said, every time we post about Friday the 13th, the video absolutely tanks. So if you could hit that like button, boost us up, I'd appreciate it. And yeah, that'll wrap it up here. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the hard shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna smash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna smash your ass.